Okay, we're live for the latest edition of the Data Value Show. Today's editions, they're going to be called the Data Truth Bomb. And who better to have to drop the truth bomb on the data world, Jesse Anderson. Welcome back to the show, Jesse.
Welcome. I appreciate you having me, Chris. It's good to be back and good to drop these bombs.
Yeah, exactly. I think what triggered this, there was an exchange of conversation going on with my recent posts, and I saw your name pop up, and I thought, I know this guy shares the same views on some of this stuff, so let's get him back on the show and discuss the data industry at the moment, and from our position, to be a little bit more honest, maybe than others can be, that maybe work for certain vendors or work in the industry. So just in case, I know you've been on it before and I know you very well, but for the audience that's listening today, do you want to give yourself a bit of an intro?
Sure. So my name is Jesse Anderson. I'm the big managing director at Big Data Institute. We work with companies on big data and AI all over the world. I've written 3 books on how to run data teams, and I've written 2 books on how to run data teams and 1 on how to become a data engineer. I hope people take that advice because that advice is very relevant now. And written all sorts of things, spoken at all kinds of conferences all over the world, and that's how we've met before. So it's good to be back. And you're completely right. It's worth pointing out that when you're in a situation where you're at a vendor, you're at a big company, you can't really speak your mind. And unless you've been at those big companies, you don't know what I mean. But there's a PR person, you worry about your job, and so you can't really tell the truth or your personal opinion. There's a worry there.
Yeah, and I think we were trying to break it up into different areas of discussion. So I think we talked technical truths, industry truths, social media truths will probably be some categories that we can go into. And as you say, hands up, we'll have our own views from our point, but we like to try and think that we are honest and dwelling on and utilizing our experience to share why we believe this, which is I think another gap out there. There's now like an increase of specialists now out there that have used ChatGPT or read a few posts, and now they're experts in that area.
It is unfortunate. What I was thinking about the other day is that this always happened. There was always somebody either stealing content or taking and trying to summarize something or just something. And now it's just easier. We've lowered the bar. We've made it so easy. We've made it automatable. But this was always there. Now it's really bad. And I'm worried for that part of our future.
Yeah, I suppose there's 2 aspects from it, isn't there? So there's the whole copy paste code culture, whereas I've just seen some code on there, I'm going to run it without understanding it, and we see where that goes. If that gets to production, who's ever going to support that? And then there's the same one with the content. Unless you're really understanding what you're posting, and we won't talk about real life experience that underpins and influences why you believe that, you're diluting that message and it's not being validated.
If you're talking, if this is my general advice to everybody watching this, if you have a person who you're listening to, whether it's on social media or whatever, and they have not done this for the first time, put it different ways, if they've never done this in production, that's one part. But the person that I would want to know and I put the most credence in and belief in is the person who's done this the second or third time. They've actually done this for real. And there's an important part to this that I don't think people realize is when you actually have the experience of this, you're not reading somebody else's happy path, to put it bluntly. What you read in a book is a happy path. They said, oh, to write this code, here's what happens. But it's very different when you get out into the real world, and you'll find that happy path is more like this, and there's this problem, there's this problem, and there's this problem. And unless that person has had those experience of cutting their teeth at this, they think, oh, it's just this happy path. But I would say there's another step onto that that's even more important, and that is a person who has never done the second and third iteration has never gotten the experience of looking back at a previous design and saying, oh, I could actually improve it this way and this way and this way. Yep. If somebody's job hopped, and I think this is part of why job hopping is so detrimental to us, yeah, you can go after pay, but you never gain the experience. You never do version 2. If you're only at a company for less than a year or for some really short amount of time, you will have never done a version 2. You may have done a version 1, but you've never done a version 2, and you certainly haven't done version 3. And you need to apply your learnings at each one of those different versions. Yep. And that is something that cannot be taught, unfortunately. You can't say, okay, now on your second version, do this. And now on your third version, do this. This is hard-fought experience that you cannot learn from a book. You cannot learn from some demagogue. You have to cut your teeth at this.
And it's I'm just thinking about that over-engineering aspect. I flip it around the other way. And I've seen this on very many circumstances as well, is, you go in and you go in and you over-engineer it. You build all the things in that may be needed, which delays you actually getting the product out there. And that, even though the code may be the best, you may have actually implemented best practice, but you haven't actually got in front of the users for them to see, actually, that's not what I want. So I think there's that understanding, when it's okay to just get something put together, but knowing it isn't right, and then knowing to come back and refactor it to actually say, right, now I've understood it, I'm going to optimize it and tune it and make it more efficient afterwards. I think that's the skill that you can go the flip side and think, oh, I've got to do all of these things. And well, yes, that's the ideal. That's that perfect place you need to get to, but your path to getting to that may not be going straight to the Rolls-Royce solution.
It is, and this is one of the problems with beginners. If you have a team of just beginners, they're going to go either one way or the other with that. They're either going to over-engineer completely, or they're going to completely under-engineer because they didn't understand it. They're not going to be at that right level. So in general, when we do consulting, or when we're trying to do an architecture, I try to just find that right level where to talk to the people and just be a little bit above that, rather than let's go too far one way or the other. Just need to be just a little bit above. Don't go too far.
It's a good quote from Donnie. I like this one as well. So, it's always hard to fly the plane and replace the wings. Yeah, and I think, again, having that architecture design, knowing I need wings, I need a fuselage, I need the engines, but I can optimize those on the each time I land, I can go and optimize and enhance those parts. But yeah, you're always going to need the basics. But yeah, good comment there, Donnie. So and I think we're talking about truth bombs, and we've seen many of these industries come and go. Whereas we had the data warehouse era, we had the big data bubble, and we've had the modern data stack, and which fractured or splintered off maybe into postmodern data stack or composite data stack, as people are calling them now. But the capabilities and functionality haven't changed. Sorry, what's needed to be achieved hasn't changed dramatically, and a lot of these changes have been driven by marketing to say, right, this is the new way of doing this. The modern data stack had a blueprint of it's always Fivetran, Snowflake, Tableau for your reporting. It was very much that is the modern data stack. A lot of that is driven by, were they all the best products? Some of them maybe not now. But the marketing really drove what people decided they want to build, rather than looking at the good old-fashioned requirements, if I say. So do you think there's a bit of a do you think that marketing have a play in this, play in the truth bomb of our industry, of where we may not be drawn to doing the best things, we're drawn to doing what the marketing are selling us to do?
It definitely is the case, and it's significantly to our detriment. It is really going to kill us to do architecture by being marketed to.
Yeah.
Because do you know who the best company at marketing is? It's usually not the best technical solution. It's the best at marketing.
Yeah.
Which is a sad state of affairs. That if you look at, sometimes you can look at a company and you look at breakdowns of it. I don't know if anybody's ever done that at LinkedIn, and you start to say, all right, how big is their sales and marketing staff? How big is their engineering staff? How big is this and this? And you'll find that the ratios can be very different between two companies within the same industry. And it's because they've realized that sales and marketing mean growth, not necessarily a better product. So if you can just market your way and sell your way out of it, hey, who cares if it's a better product? So then it becomes whose job is it? There's a conference talk that I give, and I say, okay, whose job is it to tell you the right thing? Is it the salesperson's job? Is it the marketing job? No. You should be wise enough in your old age to know that the marketing's job is to tell you that their product works incredibly well for every single thing. It's a sales job to do that. So that salesperson, even if they're doing, let's say, a challenger sales model or whatever model, in the end, it's their job to sell you that. So you're thinking, okay, well, it's a book's job to tell me this, or it's somebody else, it's a consultant's job. Well, it depends on what kind of consultant you have. Do you have a consultant who has a heuristic? That's what I think of when you talk about this, is the heuristic or a stack. If you hired a consultant and their stack that they say on their website is, we do everything with Snowflake and whatever, guess what solution you're going to get? You're going to get a Snowflake solution. Whether it's the right one, right, wrong, or indifferent, this is the stack that you get. And what's, I think, different and core about this is stacks for software engineering worked okay. If you had LAMP stack, so Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP back in the day, and somebody was saying, okay, well, let's do Cold Fusion, or you can say React versus whatever. There's not a massive difference between these different frameworks. It's not, hey, oh, I'm sorry, that project failed because you chose React instead of Next.js. Okay. But in data, it is a big difference between these two. And if you're so new that you don't understand this difference, you are going to fail because of this. There's a chasm between these two. And so back to that question of whose job is it to tell you? Well, usually if you're the architect in the room, it's your job. But you may not know this. And that's where this importance of bringing somebody in who actually knows their stuff to be able to say, well, you're telling me this, but that's not really what you need. What you need is this. And here is the stack for that. Or I prefer not to do stacks. I think stacks are inherently lazy because you're going after those heuristics once again, instead of looking at requirements and saying, okay, we need this, this, and this. This is what's key. What's hard is to do that. What's easy is to say, oh, that stack. That.
See, and that's a good point of the fact that there's been many failures in the data industry. I'm sure in other parts of IT as well, but we've been an outlier for a while, and I think we've been closing the gap in the latest stats I saw. But we're still on the naughty step, should we say, with regards to success in historically. And I see this a lot where someone comes in and I'd like to put my hand up and say that we will not always do this, and it is the reason why if your project failed is because of technology. And it's very rare that it's the technology that the project's failed. Is normally people, processes, ways of working, not getting the requirements, not having state. It's normally your SDLC or your data SDLC process.
It's early on. I have in one of my talks, I have this Failures over time. This graph that I did of failures over time, and where here is the start time, here is the current time or end time.
Yeah.
Failures start here. They drop off dramatically, but they start at the beginning.
Yeah. So yeah, and yeah, but normally there's a death march or whatever. They'll carry on the project. The failure's already happened, but they're just working towards it until, you know, they've been the stakeholders have run out of patience, and they get the next person and they'll say, oh, it was wrong because of the stack. You know, we didn't use the medallion architecture. We didn't use a data lake approach or a lake house approach, and we have to change it all now. And that creates so much waste. I've seen in the industry where knee-jerk reactions to, for example, now putting an Apache iceberg everywhere. Okay, well, great. Well, why do you want to do that? What's the business benefit? You know, and we save money on storage. We're not locked in. We can use multiple compute engines. Great. Is that gonna be a difference in your project success or not a success now? Less likely. I think you can look at how you release to production, what your testing is on that route to production. They're bigger factors that will actually cause your project to be a failure, rather than, oh, now I'm gonna now use external tables and have a lake house approach. So I you know, any technical people out there is challenge that. And I think you did a good one at Day-to-Day Texas when someone said, I want it real time. Do you want it? Why do you want it real time? And, you know, going through that real sort of double downing on the requirements, and they'd be like, oh, actually, every 2 hours is fine, you know. And I think we still need to do that with regards to some of these new architecture changes being proposed now. So, well, yeah, we could do that, but, you know, is it? Yeah.
One point I make there is, it's kind of back to what we were just talking about. You're being marketed to, but also your manager is being marketed to. Mm-hmm. So understanding that of, okay, you've heard from particular companies. One comes to mind that says everything should be real time. I disagree with that. And so they probably heard that message, and now they're saying, oh, got to have that dashboard in real time. And that could be the manager, it could be a non-technical person, it could be they're getting marketed to as well. And so it's part of your job, I think, is to figure out, okay, what was your influence for that? You say real time, to your point, but what is that motivation for real time? Was it simply a knee-jerk marketing reaction?
Yeah, and I think it's I suppose it's that storytelling aspect that really that you need to need to work to actually not tell them they're wrong or not say they'd be stupid, but actually take them through the journey of them realizing themselves that may not be the best approach. I was writing an article at the moment, and it was MIT did this white paper a little while ago about wrapping data, selling data, and improving with data. And a friend of mine did a blog recently on the wrapping, and I'm just doing one on the selling, and it's I play this out. I think maybe it was one of the posts you commented on, but it was like the CEOs, you know, he's going, oh, I'm going to monetize our data. The CFO says, oh, brilliant, you know, what are you going to do? He goes, oh, we're going to sell our data. So, oh, what's the plan? Oh, I've hired a CDO. Well, that's your plan. So you're going to give this to the CDO to go and sell that data. And then I think there's a whole a myth, you know, is a data truth bomb out for you. So if you think you want to actually go and be able to sell your data, you need to look at loads of different aspects to see if that's actually achievable. You know, is it unique? What's the uniqueness of that data that you're going to be selling? You know, if it's not unique enough, there's no point you selling it. It's no point. Now, have you got a big enough market share of this data that is going to enable? Is your internal teams happy with the data service you're providing to at the moment? If they're not, well, there's no point you trying to sell the data because you can't even deliver it to your internal stakeholders. Have you actually given the right context to this data that, again, internally they can use it? If you, and I think if you go through, and I've got a few more things: enrichment level, provenance, ability to execute. And the last one, I think, impact assessment. And what would be the impact of your core business if now you start selling this and your competitors who are getting access to it? That can have a negative effect actually on your core business anyway. So, yeah, you may have increased the revenue line with selling data, but you've just increased your other areas of your business. So, I think there's.
Sorry, I actually have a story about
Yeah.
that. I was just talking to a friend of mine about one of the projects he did for one of the major credit card companies. And so one of the data sets out there is the information about other people's credit cards. So what they were credit card purchases. So their credit card data was open, so they could actually go through and say, okay, we can figure out how much is being used on this competitor. And now we're going to turn that around and market to those people and say, oh, we have this person and they're putting this much in, but you should accept our credit card. It just blew my mind that, oh yes, yeah, you could it could be used by your competitor just like that to really turn their business around.
Yeah. So yeah, and exactly. So I think it's great. MIT done a nice white paper and said that there's 3 categories of monetization. The CEO is going to go down to his golf course, fishing club, whatever. Not being generalist, they're going to think this is achievable, and it's a misconception. And even look at the other 2. The wrapping. That's a whole. To deliver that, you need to make that data part of a product. It's more going into a product mentality, which again, not many companies are in that position to do that. The data teams and operational teams are still distant cousins, rather than the same in the same close family. But I mean, the main one is improvements with data, and that's where we can succeed, and that's where that's where you can get that monetization aspect. But that should be the first point of anyone that wants to try and monetize there. Look to use the data to improve how you work internally. You do that, then you may be able to move on to the other steps. So, but don't walk before you can. Don't run before you can walk. So I got off topic a bit there, but.
We're going to get you a little soapbox.
Exactly. It's ranting Monday today. And the other thing we talked about, and we touched on this earlier, was I had Russell on last week, and we talked about a generalist role. And I'll put my hand up. I'm a generalist now. I'm not. Maybe have a specialism in some areas, but generally I'm a generalist now. And that's taken years to get that generalist knowledge, and you always have a baseline to keep it updated on. But there is always a need for specialists, and we have some great ones on our team. If I don't know something, I know who to go to, or the community. But I think that's probably another truth bomb out there, is that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay to go and need a specialist. It's okay to know your limits. And that's what being a team player is all about as well. So do you think there's been a rise in this generalist role now?
It seems like it. It seems like it's a way for people to say, oh, I don't know everything, and that's okay. But one of the biggest messages I would tell people is, hey, your 20 generalists won't be able to do that data product that you need, unfortunately. So it's key to that of your generalists work with your specialists, and together they'll create a data product, but you'll need those specialists still. And that specialization is important, because I don't think any one person can know all this stuff anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, when the stack was much smaller, but even now, just a cloud, the cloud providers, I don't think anybody could tell me that they're a specialist in one of the cloud providers anymore. Maybe very small parts of that cloud provider, but I don't think you can even say I know everything about Azure or
No.
AWS or whatever. There's too many products. So it's this recognition that, hey, you do need a specialization, that there is a deeper level that you're going to have to do or have to achieve in order to do this the right way. Until you, I've seen this with other companies. They think that their generalists can do this. They're generalists now with an LLM, now with minimal amounts of help, and they're thinking, well, no, actually, they can't do it. They still can't do it. It's not an issue of I couldn't write the code fast enough. It's an overall lack of understanding. It's an overall lack of experience. It's that there's a lot of problems that go along with this. Of this isn't just, hey, you couldn't write the code. This is, you couldn't create the architecture. You couldn't carry this out. You can't deal with this operationally. It's this growing thing that you need, that those specialists give you, that they can help you round that out. This isn't a key part of what allows teams to be successful.
So, and do you think there's a desire now for people to be specialists now? So, and we've talked about this, people chasing maybe the titles, chasing the shiny stuff. Are we going to be able to keep? Are we going to be able to keep? Are we going to have a knowledge void of specialisms if we keep going the direction we're going with how we're hiring, how we're mentoring, how we're training the next generations?
I think we are. I've seen quite a few posts of people saying we don't need generalists anymore, hire for fit rather than knowledge. And I think that works okay for certain domains, business domains, certain business domains. But if you're saying, hey, I'm going to be able to train that person, they know computers pretty well, they can do Excel, and I'll say, oh, they can learn coding, they can learn, and then, but there's this post that I would suggest people watch or read. I talked about it in terms of Civilization. You remember the Civilization game?
Yeah.
Which is a new one's coming out pretty soon. The world will be less productive for a bit. But anyway, there's the technology tree in Civilization. And the reason I use that analogy is some of these things that are pretty early on in that technology tree, writing, alphabet, that sort of thing, they're pretty fundamental, but they take time. And so if you're saying I'm all the way over here and I need to do this advanced thing, but I haven't even researched the alphabet yet, guess what? You're going to have to go each one of those hops all the way along. There's no shortcut of, hey, we'll press the turbo, the easy button, and they skip over all that and they go advanced or even intermediate. That doesn't happen, unfortunately. Right. And this is one of the ways I've seen teams not go anywhere is, guess what? They took a bunch of beginners and maybe they weren't beginner programmers. Maybe there were a lot of generalists, but they didn't have somebody on the team who actually knew what they were doing enough. And I guess related to that is if you just have that one person on the team that knows what they're doing, you know what happens? They're less productive because all of the people who don't know what they're doing come to them.
Yeah.
And so you have a cumulative effect of that, let's say 8-hour day that they spend coding or could spend coding, that goes down to 4 hours. And so you've made that person half as productive and you've raised the productivity of the other people by smaller amounts. And that's a key driver of why I think these projects are so failing so often, is that we take our most productive people and we make them less productive indiscriminately.
And do you think it's more the fact we don't recognize it? So I suppose it's a good thing. Well, the fact that mentoring and training up those others is a good thing, but if it gets to a point where that's not actually what they want to do all the time, they're going to leave, and then you've lost a key person dependency. So I suppose it's keeping a balance of recognizing I'm going to need 2 of those senior people in there that I can share that load off. That maybe I used to like pie shapes, rather than T shapes. Between the 2 of them, they've got breadth and they've got depth across another, which they can train the next generation. So is that how you talk about I haven't read your book on the team structure. I'll probably put it on my list. How would you shape up that team to have that technical capability, but also the mentoring capacity, as well as the skills balance of junior and senior?
So the issue is that a lot of companies try to skew it very junior to just a few senior, and it actually should be the other way around. It should be a lot of senior people to a junior person.
Yeah.
And I think the reason behind that is cost. Quite frankly, there's this perceived cost of, if I throw enough junior people at it, they will eventually get through this. So the key issue there is, if you have a lot of junior people, so one of the ones I talked about, a lot of junior people, I talk about this in the book as well. A bunch of junior people will go nowhere because they don't know. They don't, to your point, that pie, you don't have 10 people fill out the pie. In fact, this is one of the visualizations I have in there.
Yeah.
If you think of Trivial Pursuit and you think of the little pie wedges that you put in as you win, they're thinking, oh, I just have all these 10 juniors or these 10 inexperienced people, and they'll fill in that little pie.
Yeah.
And what actually happens is they stack all on the same thing, and you have a pie that's 90% empty with that 10% filled, and that doesn't get you anywhere. So what you really want is a much more senior team, and that's unfortunate for your junior people. But the reason for that is I talk about my definition of a data engineer is a software engineer who has specialized their skills in data and big data. So what we have is we have a specialization of a software engineer. And if you're throwing junior people at this, the junior people have not become good software engineers yet, frankly. And then you throw them at an even more complex problem of distributed systems. And that's not saying that nobody can do it. I'm saying the vast majority of people can't do it. It's a really hard thing. We'll talk more about that later. Don't believe your favorite data influencer that says all this stuff is easy. It's actually really hard. And so that team structure, if you want to read it, it's called, that book is called Data Teams. But it's important because I saw this trend well before I started writing the book. And I was trying to get people to understand this is how you fail. It's not to what we were talking about before. You didn't fail just now. You failed when you created the team and you structure the team incorrectly.
And I mean, going on with that, there's some great stuff I'm going to drill down in a minute. But it's not only your team, but it's also how your team is operating within your whole organization as well. So their accountability, responsibility, their ability to be able to deliver. You can have a team. You can have a team that's the best balance, but put into an environment that they're never going to be able to succeed because they don't have the budget line, or they don't have the access needed to certain areas because they have to go through another team. So, it's a really interesting stuff. But going back to the team structure of having more senior to junior, and that to me that makes sense because having the time it would take to look over or mentor the juniors, if you split that across more than one senior, they're going to have more different viewpoints as long as those seniors have got different strengths. We talked about soft skills before as well. I think that's something that needs to be passed down as well. Do you think you'll be able to get through the training, those juniors? So say, for example, it's a 4-to-2 ratio. Just bring 4 seniors to 2 juniors. With that approach, could those juniors accelerate their path because they've had a good balance of mentoring and focused time on activities that they're working on? Or do you think it helping? Maybe not reduce, but would it reduce it?
I'll answer that 2 ways, and that is, one is the project allocating time for those people to be mentored. Put a different way, is the project's so far behind that every minute spent with their juniors is another minute that puts the project behind, because the reason that now there's an inverse, or there's a negative connotation to helping of, I don't want to help you, we're already behind, I need to be working. So that often puts the juniors off in some kind of no man's land, and that's not very helpful. But the advice I would give to juniors watching this is, if you're trying to find a place to go and you're trying to make a decision, aim for the company or the team that actually talks about mentoring and does it. And that will accelerate you. Part of what I've tried to do is throughout my career, I didn't get a lot of mentoring from the senior people. And so I've tried to incorporate that into the feedback I give to people, of saying, okay, well, you did this. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Software engineering, data engineering is not the memorization of a bunch of syntax.
No.
If you want to tell me about your knowledge of syntax, who cares? If you know the difference between a volatile and keyword in Java and you don't, hey, guess what? It's probably not going to make a difference in data engineering. Okay. But what makes a software engineer good, or somebody who understands code well, is they can solve a problem well in code and consistently. And that is what a junior engineer should be trying to do. You've learned some syntax, but you are not good at software engineering yet, because you can't be given a problem and say, go solve that in code. You might be able to solve maybe some simple problems, but the really complex problems, those are a different story.
Yeah, it's the problem solving is what you want to. That's what you want to get out of this, as you say. It's not all about the syntax; it's how they solve the problem. You can give feedback on that afterwards. What was I just mentioned? So back to the projects behind. So in that situation, it sounds like if a project's behind schedule and time's the most pressing issue of success, you shouldn't really have juniors on there. You need your seniors to go and get it done. So I suppose that's a good lens on that one. But then go back to that ratio. We've got four senior to 2 junior. Is that going to be enough to fuel the training desire, the need that we have at the moment to satisfy the roles that are going to be required in the data space?
I don't think so. I think that even a 4-to-2 ratio would be too low. I think it's more closer to an 8-to ratio. Where there's far more seniors to juniors.
So back to that time it takes. So if it is that 8-to-2, we need to be churning out, as an industry, we need to be churning out with that right ratio, which means you're getting the right level skills that are going out there. And so this is the truth bomb. There is no fast tracking to becoming a data engineer. You can't go and read a book and do one course and then you're on a 500k job that we've mentioned before. But if you really like what you like this career and like this path, finding a role in a company where that does really support that mentoring approach. But as an industry, we're going to need to churn out. We're going to need to churn out these engineers every couple of years before those old people all roll off. Otherwise, everyone will just be coding by prompt going forward. That won't be a good. That won't be. Well, I don't think that would be a good place.
It won't be. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, of the coding by prompt, or even watching a lot of the boomers in the US retire who were software engineers. And what was interesting there is that there was no there was no longevity, or there was no handing over the reins, or passing the baton, as it were.
Yeah.
That the passing the baton was, okay, go rewrite my COBOL code. And there is, it was quite weird. I hope we don't do that as we roll off. I hope that there's some sort of different methodology to our madness, but I hope not. We'll see.
Well, there's a demand for COBOL now. I mean, I even me at my age, COBOL was old when I started, and but it's still massively used out there. So I think that's going to be the first one we see that skill shortage on, and we'll see how that works. Well, I suppose if code converters converted to something else, we'll have some other code that someone else can't support, but in a different language at least.
That'll be interesting. As I've thought through that part of it, of let's convert our COBOL code to Java, what will happen there is it's an it's a direct conversion, which brings in sometimes a lot of the mainframe mentality, or mainframe, or workarounds, or weirdness, and doesn't really come back and say, okay, well, how would we do this now, or how would we do this better? And so I've been thinking about how do you actually do that cut over better? Because I think it would be really interesting if, okay, let's take some COBOL code and let's convert that to language du jour.
And explain what it's doing as well. Document it as you go through, so you can actually by writing it, you've understood it, and then someone else that comes and looks at it later on will understand it as well. It's a dying art of being able to document. There's a message from Mark Venn here, and just, having a mentor early in your career and still the same mindset as you, the cycle then hope repeats. I think I'll add to that is you want more than one mentor, because you don't want to have just people thinking the same way as you. And I think what I learned, I had quite a few mentors, and I took a blend and made it my own. And I think that's something that you should. You won't have one mentor in your whole life. There'll be mentors on your whole journey. But the earlier they start, the better. Definitely agree with that.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is to hedge your bets, not just for that reason, but because early on in your career, you may not know. You may latch on to somebody who is actually not very good, and so you may be saying, "Oh, I was told this or that," and hey, guess what? They were wrong. The other example is the best. If you're at a small company and the best programmer there, that isn't saying much potentially that they're the best one there. That just means that there's not many people there and that they're the best one there. So do be careful.
That's very true. Very true. I think variety is what you need over the years, and you can. Many of my mentors, I didn't know they were mentors at the time. It wasn't until afterwards I thought, actually, you're actually mentoring me. So it doesn't have to be some sort of formal arrangement as well. It can be, it can be something that just happens naturally. So what I'm going to get to next. So we covered, we touched on some of the industry truths. I suppose let's go a bit more into that. And in fact, next week we've got Sunny on here as well, which we're talking about anti-AI, I think we called it, from data products to AI products. Every product now thinks it's an AI product, but so. And I when I speak to non-data people, I do occasionally speak to non-data people in the world. I still try to talk about data, but they ask me about data. But and it's this misconception that AI is just going to take over the roles, the jobs we do, and I don't. I get into disagreements to some degree, because I actually understand what's under the bonnet of all these things and realise that we're a long way of being able to have autonomy given to AI in many places. You're still going to need a human in the loop. The thing is, the whole infrastructure and ways of working and data quality, the context to it, we're so far behind getting that actually in a position that AI can do its best, and until it can do its best, then I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah, what's your view of with people? They say that AI is going to take over the world and take all of our jobs. What's your view of that?
I think that we should be augmenting ourselves already with AI at a bare minimum. I've been doing quite a bit of coding with Claude Sonnet, and it has been interesting to use it. It's helpful. But at the same time, the worst bugs I've done in the past few, or not the worst bugs, but some of the most long ones that took me the longest to find and figure out were actually ones that were created by the LLM. So you get into this issue of, oh, the LLM gives me good responses 95% of the time. I'll take a quick look at its response. Okay, looks good to me, and move on. And then what will happen is that 5% that you miss of some wrong response, it kills you in terms of your productivity. Of all that productivity gain that you had, you lose it, and then quite a bit. So part of what I've been trying to think about as we talk about this LLMs replacing programmers or coders is, what is coding? What is software engineering? I just talked about it. Software engineering is one part, the writing the syntax. That is definitely a part of what we do, hands on keyboard writing something. But that isn't the only thing we do. And I think that's key to keep in mind. I've been wanting to write this post about what is hard about software engineering, or what do we do as software engineers? And a lot of what we have to do is understand the domain. But we don't just understand the domain a little bit. We actually have to understand the domain better than the person doing it. And I don't think most people, most non-technical people, understand that. I'll talk to some people and I'll have a bunch of knowledge in some weird domain, finance, let's say, or how does ACH work? How does in the US? How do you move money in the US? Well, it turns out I have to know that because I wrote software and had to learn that more than the person who did it. So you had to know how to do that other person's job in addition to your job. And so the promise of AI, or the theoretical promise, is, oh, we take out that programmer, and the person with that knowledge, that subject matter expert, they just write the code. They just type in some prompts and everything happens. And that just isn't how this is going to play out. That promise of everybody being a programmer, that's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
And you know what hasn't happened? They're not programmers. When we think about programming isn't a bunch of calculus. It's not a bunch of math. It's a bunch of logic.
Yeah.
And very bluntly, most humans are not very good at the logic required. If you look at just a simple game, Sudoku is a logic game. There's the logic games on LinkedIn. Chess is a logic game.
Yeah.
So when you think about, hey, you're really good at chess, you're really good at Sudoku, the number of people that can even do that, that's a whole different thing than programming. You take programming plus, and that becomes programming. You may start at Sudoku, but then
it's layered up on
it's layers and layers and layers. It's that technology tree from civilization that takes you all the way there. And so I think that more of a direct answer to your question is, I don't think we replace programmers. I actually put out a poll where I said, I think that we either have much more productive senior people or slightly more productive junior people. It's not really, do we take our lay people, our SMEs, subject matter experts, and give them, oh, now you code. Okay. I think it's more that we say, okay, I'm going to take fewer people, or perhaps the same people, and make them much more productive, rather than, okay, buy all my programmers, and we start doing this ourselves.
No, it's going to be an interesting times. I think I hope it's educating the next generation on a bit of a realistic view. Is a start, and we've covered this before, and I know we've probably got some homework meant to do on this. Was doing something about soft skills that are needed, and you mentioned it earlier. It's about that problem solving. I got into this industry. I like solving problems. This helps satisfy my desire to do that, and I think that's probably another bit of advice is, I think I did the post about passion for doing something. I know it's not always black and white, and you've got passion that you can go and do it. There's entry and getting into something, but if you do have that opportunity, do have a choice of what you work in, choose something you enjoy doing if you can, because you got to do it a long time, and you'll be better at it because you enjoy it. So don't try and force yourself to go and do your role because the title, you think the money is going to be great, or you think it's easy, because it's not easy. So yeah.
No matter what you've been told, this is not easy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And we're still learning myself now. I've been doing this a long time. So I think we're pretty well. We got a few more minutes there. Is there anything else you want to? Anything else you want to raise, highlight in the industry at the moment?
I think it's restating what we see as a problem of, as we look at the influencer market, or what's happening in the influencer, this rise of the influencer.
Yeah,
it's really important to understand their motivation as you go to either engage with them or follow their advice or whatever. So when you have an influencer, they're going after clicks and views, not necessarily correctness. They're going after clicks and views. They need that whatever metric from LinkedIn to keep going up and up, so that their posts keep going up and up, and so their follower count goes up and up. And there's also another important part to that, and that is some of these influencers have never written a line of code in anger. Put a different way, as they were not a software engineer, now they're a data engineer, and that's a pretty difficult leap to make.
Yep.
So be careful with those sorts of people and listening to them, because they've never done this in anger. They've read a book, they've synthesized something, or maybe an LLM has synthesized something for them, but it's actually really important, and probably one of the biggest issues in our industry as a whole. The other talk, if you want to see it's up on my YouTube channel. I also gave it at Big Data London, and that is, we have this diaspora, this growing movement of people that just move from position to position with doing a search and replace on their job titles at each point. So we started a few years ago with DBAs to data warehouse engineers, and then it was data analyst to data scientist, and now it's data scientist to data engineer. And it's really important for people to understand. I see a common thread, and I see this with data scientists, where they say, I love data, and so I decided to become a data engineer. Great, welcome. Hey, I hope it grows well for you. But being the best data engineer on a data scientist team is very different than being the best data engineer in a data engineering team.
Very true.
And so that bar is very different of, okay, if you have a bunch of data scientists who've learned how to code at a boot camp, being the best amongst them is not a high bar.
No.
And so as you try to make these switches, these go from data scientist to data engineer, it's definitely possible. I've seen it many times. I've helped students do that, but it is not a lateral movement of, change and search and replace. Now I'm a data engineer. It is, no, your technical skills are probably not up to snuff for what's going to be necessary. It is not, I do some ETL and I move some things around. It is far more difficult than that. So I think it's really important that people understand what's happening in the industry, understand the motivations of why somebody will put out a video that says, oh, it's easy to switch.
Yeah.
It's because they want you to view that video, and their view count is what's important. And then maybe they'll have some kind of crappy class that's your next step in there. It is not what I mean, with all apologies, I've thought of this as, I've always tried to be more industry wide, that this is an industry, me trying to help our industry because I've been doing it for the past 10 plus years. This isn't me just coming in and saying, oh, great, I can make some quick money off this.
Yeah.
I've been doing this way before it was popular, way before it was the sexiest thing, and I'm still doing it. So it's important to understand those motivations of me thinking about this more historically, more long term, rather than somebody coming in and saying, quick money, leave, no whammy, bye.
Yeah, those are really good points. Really good points. And Dan Blake has put a good comment there. I think we'll get back to that one. I'll reply to that one a little later. So if you want to put those links to those videos into the chat, or so people can find them, that'd be great. But where we were talking earlier, if people want to see you, hear you talk, or where you're speaking next, or get involved with some of your courses you're doing, where can they find more information?
You can go to jesse-anderson.com, my YouTube channel. You can find it there. Next places I'm speaking at are Connected Data London, and I'm speaking at a conference in Belgrade, Serbia in January, or no, in November. And then I'm speaking at Big Data Europe in Vilnius, Lithuania. And I'll be in Washington, D.C. for the Sensing user conference as well. And
that's a packed agenda. I mean, we think you maybe day-to-day Texas, but that's unconfirmed yet. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe then. But yeah, lot. And then there's my show, Unapologetically Technical, which I invite people to watch, because we actually get into the things that are not, surface level. We're actually whiteboarding out some pretty deep technical concepts. Like the latest one I did that's going to go live, I think, tomorrow. We were talking about Bloom filters and how do you optimize inverted indexes, things that I've never seen a YouTube channel actually talk about that. I've seen some YouTube channels kind of talk about some things, but they were configurations. Like here's a configuration you can turn on, and they turned it into a 30-minute thing. And I'm like, that's not really. You took a lot of credit for something.
Follow me now. Here.
Yeah, follow me now. Follow me now. And you're thinking, okay, that did a disservice to everybody. You could have talked about that in 10 minutes and not taken so much personal credit for it. And here, expand your horizons, learn about Bloom filters, inverted indexes, so that you understand what they do and how you optimize them.
And just on that note, I think that's one of the problems of the SaaS industry is no one knows what's underneath the bonnet of these things now. And I think just having that knowledge, if you're using a SaaS product, really just helps with your understanding of conceptually what's happening. But yeah, I'm actually interested in inverted indexing myself. I might check that one out. So thanks for that, Jesse. Yeah, I think we'll probably call it a wrap. I'll just give a shout out to next week's guest. We've got Sonny back, Ain't I AI, with a bit of a English slang in the title there, but from data products to AI products. Our data products are really AI products, and we'll be looking into that. But Jesse, thank you very much for coming on again. Always a pleasure talking. Hope to catch up again soon on the conference tour. But yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.